getting it. Which brings us right into the main event. We've got
and
15
now
minutes.
It's time for the main event on NMSR Science Watch. Let's get ready to establish an intellectual dialogue.
Okay, and so the title of this, Hockey Stick Politics, ClimateGate or ClusterPuck. And I said that properly, folks.
And carefully.
And very, very carefully. David, you want to give Mark the appropriate intro?
Sure.
You know where he's from? You know where he got his PhD from?
Mark Boslough got his PhD Cal State or Caltech. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. That was a trap, folks, because I kept saying Cal Poly at one time.
Caltech we have
Caltech,
here.
Yes.
And he has long been a physicist at Sandia, and he's been a speaker at NMSR many times on the subject of asteroid impacts, and he's an international expert. And he's been, when the National Geographic had an expert on whether one scarab in King Tutankhamun's jewelry collection was actually glass from a meteor impact 35 million years ago, they went to Mark Boslough. And that was a fascinating thing. So usually he's talking about the old impact stuff and modeling impacts, and he modeled Shoemaker-Levy 9 smashing into Jupiter. That was a smashing success, actually.
Modeled it properly.
Yeah. But today we're talking about climate change and global warming and all that. And this Wegman report has really perked up in the news lately, and it just hasn't caught on in the mainstream media. So you are hearing the behind-the-scenes scoop that may finally begin playing out on the world stage in the weeks to come, but it hasn't taken off yet, and it's a really big story.
And remember, folks, Wegman is the guy that just said carbon dioxide stays closer to the Earth, and that's why it acts as a greenhouse gas, and that's
a total crock.
And this was a report, and you can jump in any time, Mark. This was a report that was supposed to review a report made by scientists. And it turns out Wegman is a statistician. He's not a scientist. He's a statistician.
Well,
he's reviewing a book on science. I mean, this is
Wegman
typical
is
politician.
at George Mason University, but his report was widely, credited with, disproving human-caused global climate change. So what's the new revelations?
Okay,
Mark?
Let me give you a little background here. And what the politics about this was in the early part of the first decade of this century. In 1998, three paleoclimatologists, and those are people who study the climate of the past, particularly temperatures of the past, Mann, Bradley, and Hughes, they published a paper in which they did a temperature reconstruction. So they used instrumental temperatures from thermometers, and then they used tree rings and corals and other natural recorders, and they combined all that together into a long-term temperature record to show how anomalous the current temperature increase is, how rapid it is, and how extreme it is. And because there was such a sharp upturn at the end, it looked like the blade of a hockey stick, and people referred to that as the hockey stick graph. It ended up being featured very prominently in the 2001 report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, and it was met with howls of protest from those who don't accept anthropogenic climate change, human-caused climate change, in particular politicians from oil-rich states like Oklahoma and Texas. And you might remember Senator Inhofe's statement that global warming is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated in history or something like that. It turns out that, again, on the Canadian theme, there were a couple Canadians who looked at the statistical analysis in that paper by Mann, Bradley, and Hughes, and they found some flaws. And they published this, and I'll refer to them as denialists, the people who deny the evidence and the theory of global warming. They embraced that. And one of those who embraced it was Representative Barton from Texas, another oil-rich state, who sent a letter to the three authors and others demanding that they immediately provide all their data, all their source code, everything. And he ended up holding hearings. And that was what we heard the quote from Wegman earlier in the show. So they got Wegman to form a committee, a panel, to write a report to do the statistical analysis of the Mann, Bradley, and Hughes paper. And they had the hearing and talked about how there were flaws. It turns out that the flaws were fixed, and the bottom line is the same. It still looks like a hockey stick. It's been replicated over and over. But to this day, the denialists use that Wegman report as the reason that the hockey stick has been discredited, and therefore global warming is a hoax. So that brings us to the Wegman report. Very important report. It wasn't just a sole author. It was Wegman and two others with other help. And so that gets to my role in this, and I don't really have a role other than communication. I attended a NMSR meeting in December. Henry Pollack gave a talk about climate change, and the so-called ClimateGate controversy had just gotten really big, and so there were a lot of questions about that. That's the theft of emails from the British Climate Research Unit, where people's stolen emails were broadcast, and it made them sound bad when taken out of context. And so I expressed some opinions about that, and Ken Fraser, who's the editor of Skeptical Inquirer, asked me if I'd write an essay about it for that magazine, and I think that issue is appearing in people's mailboxes today. And I wrote an article called Man Bites Dog. There was another essayist for the same issue by the name of John Massey, who I have never met, but because of some of the emails that were going on, and we were both on the CC list, we started a conversation, and he said, there's a lot of stuff coming out about the Wegman report. You should look at these blogs, and there's more, maybe even more. So I started looking at a blog out of Canada called Deep Climate. The author of the blog calls himself Deep Climate and remains anonymous.
And it's deepclimate.org, right?
Deepclimate.org, and if you go there, you can read about this. And not one to take what I read on blogs literally or on faith. I went and looked at the source reports, but what he did was showed that there are actually large parts of the Wegman report that are actually plagiarized. And we'll go through that, and I can vouch for the provenance of this. I downloaded the Wegman report from the House Republican website, Republicans at energyandcommerce.house.gov, I think it is. It says on the front of there, Kim. So Kim has a copy of the Wegman report, and I had a copy of the Bradley textbook on paleoclimatology. In fact, most of what I know about paleoclimatology comes from that volume, which I used in a course I took just after Kobe was born, I think in 1999, when the text was brand new. And I took the course from Canadian professor Peter Fawcett at UNM. And so I had that book on my bookshelf, and what I did was I went through and I highlighted the key sentences, just a few of them. We'll just go through a few of them. If you look through, and Kim, I've highlighted everything in the Wegman report that's been shown to have been plagiarized, and you can see there are pages. But let's go through the first three sentences that I've highlighted, and I put little numbers on them for you. So maybe Dave can read from Ray Bradley. And one of the real ironies, you may recall that the 1998 paper, whose authors were basically subjected to this congressional inquiry, were Mann, Bradley, and Hughes. This is the Ray Bradley who was being accused of fraudulent, mumbo jumbo with the 1998 paper, yet it's his paleoclimatology volume that was plagiarized. So let's go through. Dave, read the first sentence that I have highlighted.
Okay, and I am standing in for Professor Bradley, and this is his second edition of his paleoclimatology textbook. A cross-section of most temperate forest trees will show an alternation of lighter and darker bands, each of which is usually continuous around the tree circumference. There we go. That's one.
Now, Kim will read from the Wegman report.
All right. And this is very close. A cross-section of the temperate forest tree shows variations of lighter and darker bands that are usually continuous around the circumference of the tree. Boy, I'm glad I got through that. I'm really having a hard time.
Okay, let's do number 2.
Okay, here's Professor Bradley again. When viewed in detail, figure 10.1, it is clear they are made up of sequences of large, thin-walled cells, early wood, and more densely packed, thick-walled cells, late wood.
All right. And Wegman said, each tree ring is composed of large, thin-walled cells called early wood and smaller, more densely packed, thick-walled cells called late wood, also called spring and summer wood, by the way.
Okay, let's do number 3.
Okay, here's Professor Bradley. The mean width of a ring in any one tree is a function of many variables, including the tree species, tree age, availability of stored food within the tree, and of important nutrients in the soil, and a whole complex of climatic factors, sunshine, precipitation, temperature, wind speed, humidity, and their distribution throughout the year.
All right, and here's where we have something I think you'll want to point out. Wegman said, the average width of a tree ring is a function of many variables, including the tree species, tree age, stored carbohydrates in the tree, nutrients in the soil, and climate factors, including sunlight, precipitation, temperature, wind speed, humidity, and even carbon dioxide availability in the atmosphere.
So there's actually a key change there.
Exactly.
He used Bradley's word almost precisely, substituting the word average for the word mean. And as a statistician, he knows that those are synonyms.
Right?
Yeah.
But he changed the last phrase to carbon dioxide fertilization, which is something that the global warming denialists really like to harp on. So he couldn't resist. And I don't want to say he plagiarized, because I don't know. It's in the Wegman report. And when you have a multiple author report, you know, it's not that hard for one author to plagiarize without the knowledge of the other authors. So I'm not making any particular allegations here. But it's pretty clear there is plagiarized material in this report.
And the other thing is that they're twisting the words, the actual meaning.
Very subtle twist here. That you're not going to catch if you're not paying attention, basically. And certainly the Congressional Committee without scientific credentials is not going to catch it at all. And so we're going to come down on the side of
So can you imagine, though, if, for example, the IPCC report was shown to have been plagiarized from some unattributed source? There would be a lot of screaming in the media right now.
Yeah, and we wonder, Dave and I wonder, why isn't there screaming right now in the media?
Well, maybe there will be.
When I searched for this, I found even some sort of pro-denialist sites, saying, "Oh, that's just no big deal. Look at all these other things. It's global warming is collapsing. It's a lot like the creationists saying evolution's going to collapse any year now."
Yeah, and it's going to keep getting colder, right?
Yeah.
You believe that? I don't think so. We've got to start wrapping this down, folks. We've got 45 seconds about. Mark, thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
This advertised. We want this to get out. This is a big news story. It should be a worldwide news story.
It should be bigger than ClimateGate.
Yes,
but
frankly.
you've got something in the journal.
The Albuquerque Journal should be publishing my op-ed Monday unless something bumps it.
Okay. All right. We're going.
And this has been NMSR Science Watch. Check our website, nmsr.org. Virginia, give us a call to get your trivia prize at 338-4090. We've got 3 shows left, so stay tuned
Hang
next
in there,
week.
folks. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.